cracker. Aidan O Mahony vacuuming up.
Anyone in the country, they can do anything after this. If I can do dancing, they can do anything.
Yeah.
Welcome back, folks, to all the listeners and viewers to another episode with the extended panel. Joining us tonight, a man who ironically never had to worry about being on any extended panel. He was always comfortably on the matchday panel, be it in the green and gold of Kerry or for his own native Rathmore. We're joined this evening by Kerry legend Aidan O Mahony. Aidan, it's great to have you, and thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, lads.
And as usual, I'm not alone this afternoon. Joining me on this occasion from the extended panel is the man from Kilkenny, Jimmy Meaghar. Jimmy, you're looking forward to the chat with Aidan?
Yeah, shucks. How are you? And it's delighted to have Aidan on the show this afternoon. He was a ferocious competitor throughout the years for Kerry. Played in every defensive position, performed every role he was given, like the ultimate pro, and ends up winning 5 All-Ireland medals. Great servant to the kingdom, and for us to have him on the show today, it's an absolute privilege and a pleasure.
I'm not sure, Jimmy, how those All-Irelands will compare to the big one of winning Dancing with the Stars, but there'll be more on that later. Aidan, you are of course very welcome, and thanks a million for the opportunity. I've been following you on Instagram through lockdown, and you've been keeping yourself busy and keeping yourself fit.
Yeah, I suppose I think lockdown came so quick. I think the training side of it had to kind of change with the gyms closing. I suppose it was different for everyone, and that's included myself as well, where you're going from, kind of training collectively as a group, whether it's with a club or being part of a gym membership, and then all of a sudden you're at home and you're trying to kind of do your home workouts and trying to get the same benefit. So, I suppose there's been a massive wave, obviously, in social media with all the home workouts. And, I've enjoyed them. I think the big positive thing for me is that there's been so much variety that I even found myself using other people's workouts. And, I suppose for a lot of people that were off during the whole COVID lockdown, you need something for your mental health as well. Like you always talk about, I suppose, fitness. And I know myself, it goes hand in hand with mental health. And I just think it's a very important part that you have that structure of fitness in your life.
100%. And well, thank God anyway, things appear to be beginning to move again now, sports wise. You're looking forward to a club championship hopefully getting underway?
Yeah. I suppose. Look, we're back just since last week, obviously in a community field, because the club pitches still aren't open. It was a long 3 months, and I think for a country like we're steeped in GM, it's hurling, football, camogie. It just shows over the last couple of months when something's taken away from you, how much you miss it. And I just see it my own job, even when you're calling to elderly people there or people living in remote areas. The J is such a big thing, from whether it's turning on the radio on a Sunday evening, listening to the radio, commentating on the game. It's like you're at a game. So when that's taken away from you, it's a massive loss. And I found even the last couple of months there that you can be training away, but you don't have that, I suppose, that edge that you might have a young lad that's 15 years younger than you, and he's looking for your jersey, and you're saying, I'm not going to give it back to him that easy. So it's good to be back, and I think, no different to every club, they'll be really pushed for now, because, as I said, that absence has probably given players an even more hunger, to push on. We always speak about the pride you have in your club jersey, in your community as well. In the last 3 months, when that's taken away from you, I think it's an eye-opener for, I suppose, someone like myself, and obviously for younger players coming through as well.
Absolutely. And speaking of your club there, Aidan, I've no doubt Rathmore was a huge part of your life growing up.
It was massive, yeah. I suppose for me, when I started playing, I had severe asthma. I still have, and it was tough. It was tough playing football. A lot of people I speak to, and you kind of ask them why it was tough. You might get 20 minutes of a game, and I'd say I was kind of getting token runs for 15 or 20 minutes now. I think they were trying to mind my health more than mind myself. But that was probably what fitness brought to the whole asthma side. But the club side of it, I've been involved since '97. That's 23 years. Well, some lads say it's trying to retire, but I'm actually still enjoying it. That competitive age is still there. But I owe my club. Obviously, without your club, you're going nowhere. And I know that's kind of a cliche thing to say, but I started playing minors in '98, and it was actually my trainer at that time was Seamus Cooper. And I'd say he was plaguing the minor manager, which was Charlie Nedigan at the time, to bring in this fella. And eventually got in, and I broke my nose. I missed the Munster final, but I came on for the All-Ireland semi-final in '98 for, I think it was the last 10 or 15 minutes. We lost by a point to Laois. And, you know, it was just amazing for, I suppose, my own family as well to tag out and play inside in Croke Park. Kerry were playing Kildare the same day. That result didn't go too well either, because I was training Kildare today. So, yeah, and I've seen down through the years, like the biggest thing I will say about clubs is that, you know, when you win in All-Ireland, you know, the Mondays and you're coming home, but when you lose in All-Ireland, the Monday is a very lonely place, let alone the Tuesday, and your club is always there from you the following Thursday or whenever you decide to go back with open arms. You know, it's the only kind of solace that you'll have when you either finish playing football or you lose something. And I suppose for me, I've been very fortunate that way, that we've a fantastic club where, you know, I know the guy trained us at the moment, Derek Mine, his dad, Dermy, trained me when I was under 10 and 12, and like he's still doing the water bottles and stuff like. So, you know, when people ask you about Tadhg for a club, it's easy to talk about when you have these fellas that are involved year in, year out, and, you know, getting, I suppose, the pride they get out of it is watching the players coming through and the young lads coming through, and, you know, so like, yeah, clubs are everything. You know, you can play into county and everything, but at the end of the day, your club is everything.
Absolutely. There's a great togetherness and great spirit in your club. And you spoke there about representing Kerry. What that means for your club is absolutely massive. You know, your coaches who would have coached you at 10, 12 and 14, when they get to see you represent Kerry and wear that green and gold jersey, you know, it brings great pride to those guys, because, you know, you've come through their hands, they've worked with you, and to see you play in Croke Park on an occasion like an All-Ireland final day, nothing better for a club.
Yeah, and I suppose, Jimmy, the biggest thing then is probably we don't thank enough. I suppose you go through so many hands of coaches in your club that when you get into county, then you go into kind of a bubble. That's why I always kind of said about the county scene, you're with 30 fellas in 9 months of the year, and like it's like you're wrapped in cotton wool, and you kind of forget about the outside world, and everything then is geared towards those 30 players. And obviously, you know, different Kilkenny, like your year is geared towards an All-Ireland every year, and if you don't win All-Ireland, then you get seen as a failure. That was kind of ingrained in us as well. And it's a good thing for life. It means like that you want to win, but winning isn't everything. But I think it's good to ingrain that in people, and there's that kind of, I suppose, onus on you then every time you put on that jersey. So yeah, it is massive. Like, and as I said, when you're going out in All-Ireland final days, you know who you're representing, and, you know, after a game, then you're still meeting those club players or those club coaches. And as I said, for me, I think the beauty thing was that every year we were very fortunate that we got an Ireland final. If we won an Ireland final, the first stop was in Rathmore, at the Rathmore train station. Like, and that's like boyhood stuff you could write away for, like, where you're coming home and, you know, the first stop coming over the border is in Kerry, like in Rathmore, your own club, and you're taking the Sam Maguire off and you're laughing in front of a couple of thousand people, like, and, you know, those are they're amazing memories. I was probably fortunate enough that Tom Sullivan was playing me at the end of my career then. I was having Paul Murphy, won All-Ireland, Shane Ryan won a minor, and Trevis bought like, so for players that are always playing, they'll always talk about the medal, but when you retire, it's the memories you look back at, because even though me talking to you, you know, that's what it's those memories that come back to you, like, and so yeah, so they're cherished times to have. And as I say, look, very fortunate that we had a very good structure, and still has a great structure with the club as well.
And just even, you know, you mentioned there your transition, you're playing with minor. We actually had Mickey Ned O'Sullivan on the show there last week, and we were speaking to him about that transition from minor into senior level. And he mentioned that a kind of an interesting perspective he has is that if minors lose with Kerry, if minors lose at minor level, he thinks that they go on to have more hunger at senior level, and that might have been the case with you. You won 5 All-Irelands at Kerry. Your first, I think, was in 2004 after making your debut in 2003. That's a really, really special moment for you to win that first All-Ireland after being brought into the senior setup.
Yeah, and I've been speaking about this a lot now, even the last couple of months, where I suppose you talk about development squads now coming from under 14 up, and some players thinking, you know, I'm not involved in the development squad now, you know, do I throw my hat in? And I look at the minor thing, and exactly what you said there, Tadhg. If I look back at the minors in '98, I probably came in late. So instead of kind of going towards trying to get a jersey, I spent most of the time going home, I'd say after training, picking the first 15 and putting 8 other fellas in front of me in the panel, instead of kind of rewiring my mindset and saying, I've got a chance here as to get on the team. And I just found after the minors then, I just got that bit between my team. I had a bit of belief, and I think I kind of backed myself more as well. Like in the following year, I was able to do the 21s. And I was kind of saying, there was 7 or 8 lads, I think, from that minor team inside with me. And next, all of a sudden, you were gone from being number 23 on the panel to being inside the under-21s. And then I was involved for the next 2 years on 21s. So you need, I suppose you need a bit of luck, but as you said there as well, you need something to drive you on as well. And I think that kind of, I suppose I won't call it a setback with the minors, but not being involved and then kind of seeing a bigger picture, saying, you know, I can be there with them. And I think a lot of it too is when you go into the county, whatever level it's at, whether it's minor or under 20, the training is high octane, like, and it's fully flat out for the first or the initial few weeks. And it's about hanging in there, like, and kind of just sticking with it and hanging in there. Because I know myself, even when I was doing the seniors in 2003, I did my apprenticeship for a few years before, but you might go in June, and all of a sudden, like, these athletes are primed to the world altogether, and that time I suppose the club's at a lower level, and you're getting next to marking someone like Aidan O Mahony, and within 20 minutes, your heart is coming out through your chest, and you're trying to breathe, and you're saying, Jesus Christ, what's going on here? And it's an awful reality check, but a lot of the times it's just about kind of hanging in there and going away and learning from it. And I was probably fortunate enough to, like, that when Jack came in, I got a break that time. And in fairness, Paddy as well, like Paddy and Eddie Tattler brought me in first in 2003. And I think we kind of fat camp in April, where most lads go away in April with their clubs and then they do their own thing. And I was 11 stone, so it's hardly fat camp I needed now, but I'd say I needed the mindset needed to be trained, and geez, we brutal running, but you know, it's suits you, because once you get through a few weeks of those sessions, you know, they stand you in life, so you'd face anything after.
Brilliant. How you spoke there about, we'll say, your transition into the senior setup and the tough kind of slagging you went through, but all of that came worthwhile then when you won your first All-Ireland. It's a brilliant memory for you.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Like, I remember 2004, Pat Flanagan took over with Jack Connor, and it was the first time we actually, I suppose for me and a lot of lads, started going to the gym and started using weights, and tailored programs came in, and the whole, I suppose, gym and football side of it kind of started mingling. And I remember that gym, myself and Mike McCarthy used to be walking out in the gym in Killarney. I think it was in the Donegal. We were all members at the time, and we just trained constantly, twice a week in the gym, and then you do pitch sessions. And I think by the time the championship game, I was nearly up, I'd say, a stone and a half. And I needed it because I was very light at the time. And that year just flew. It was very enjoyable. We were in great shape, you know, with some massive battles with Limerick. And that when you're young like that as well, Tadhg, I just think the year flies by. Like, someone was asking me about the night for the Ireland final, like, myself and Paul Gavin were rooming together, which was probably too strange for let's put into a room if you want to let's get it like with the personalities. But we didn't sleep, and I remember coming down that morning, and I remember we were kind of saying, geez, I never slept last night. I think George Keefe said that it was before the 97 or 98 All-Ireland final that Maurice Fitz never slept, and he would often kick 10 points, so that kind of steadied the minds a small bit, like. But as in the day itself, it just flies by. I think it's about settling into the game, and it just flies by. And I found myself down through the years, like the first few years, like they were winning and stuff, like, you know, we were in finals every year, and you think those days are never going to end. Like, so all of a sudden, I think it was 2010, like, you're beaten in a quarter final, and things change, and I think you respect it a lot more then, because you don't take it for granted. It was just kind of, with that team that time, the noughties, like, you some serious characters, the Seamus Moyne, the Darrow Sheas, you know, these guys could turn the game on its head. And so there was, as I said earlier, there was always an onus on you to perform, and if you didn't, then there was always someone there to take your jersey. Like, so, you know, I was very fortunate to play with all those lads.
Wow.
Excellent. I remember actually watching the Sunday game recently. Michael Fennelly was speaking about his time in the Kilkenny setup. You know, you're never told what's expected of you when you walk in the door of a senior in the county setup, but you just know the standards are required. You know the lifestyle, you know the training routine, you know that you must buy into the whole situation and setup that's in there. I'm sure within the Kerry squad, it was the very same.
Oh yeah, I can remember the first night. I think like as I said, the first few years you kind of do your apprenticeship, and then 2004, I kind of said to myself that I was playing very well at the club, and I was starting to mark a lot of the inter-county players with Rathmore playing cornerback or wing back, and I was kind of saying to myself, geez, these guys are starting for Kerry, like, so I can't be that far off. And I can remember the first night I went in with Kerry, and I was playing wing back, marking Liam Hassett, within a few minutes, I kind of gave him a pull of the jersey, and as he hit me crack into the jaw. He turned around as if to say, "Hi, where are you? I'm here. Know your place." And but it was a good introduction. But I think a lot of it was when you go in, when you're watching the likes of Seamus Mind, these guys, and you see the training they're doing, and the level it's brought into, then you buy in very quick. There's a kind of ideology like this, I suppose, nowadays where as I'm always saying, they're elite athletes without being professional. They're as good as professional, but they still have to have their job as a fine day. And I think back in our time, it was a lot of running, a lot of football. There was no scenarios. It was 15 on 15, which was great as well. And it was just constantly football was everything. You had your warm up, your bit of running, then into games. But I suppose you have a lot of training, you have a lot of coaching into different setups, and you might have an internal game maybe 2 or 3 weeks now. I'm sure it has changed again, Jimmy, since I've retired. But I suppose nowadays you could say then as well, with the statistics and the analysis of games, it's frightening the amount of work that goes into and to be, I suppose, an county manager at the moment. There's a lot to take on as well.
Absolutely, and on top of all that talent and athletic power that Kerry team had throughout the 2000s when you were playing yourself, you were pure championship animals. When the hammer came down, you guys were ready for road every single year.
Yeah, and I think it's very kind of similar to the double team at the moment, where we kind of knew how to win. I know the 2 games against Limerick, I think it was the 2004 championship game, the time Darragh O'Shea caught the 2 balls over the crossbar, and we played them in a league game as well. I think they were up 10 points. They were a serious team at the time, and I don't know, we played in so many tight games. I remember playing above in Dublin against Panel Park against Dublin in the league game, and it was a game we needed to win, and we were missing a few players. I think the Gaeltacht were actually on the road to the All-Ireland Club final at the time, and we were down 9 points at the half-time, and we came back and beat them by 4 in the second half in the league game. But the league was treated like that time as well. Was a huge thing where lads were trying to get fit. I suppose it was different to nowadays, where a player is given a jersey now for the league, and if he plays well, he keeps on to it. In our time, it was a case of, we'd say the Gaeltacht lads were missing that time, and there was 5 or 6 missing off the team. So other lads kind of said, right, geez, I can step up here. And that was kind of filtered into championship. And as I said then, we had a very probably settled team as well, in that the team didn't really change. It was the same 3 or 4 coming on. Now, was that a good thing? I'm not too sure. But no, as I said, you had serious characters there. As I said, like Darragh O'Shea, Darragh Canada, Seamus Mind, these guys. And, they'd probably been through a barren patch of years as well, where they hadn't won, and all of a sudden, I suppose, we had a mixture of views. I know myself and Paul Galvin, a few more as came through. There was I suppose, as Jack always said, there was a bit of a hard age. I was saying he couldn't talk about us for football, but he said it was a hard age he brought us in for, and I think with that kind of mixture as well, and I suppose you always have to have some fellas that'll go across the white line to let the other fellas play, so yeah, look, as I said, they were great years, but look, there was good teams that came along with us as well that time, the Tyrones and these guys as well.
Yeah, you had some cracking battles against Tyrone, and if you look at the Tyrone games that you would have played in those years, they were absolute, the savage intensity in those matches were unbelievable. But I suppose from my own point of view, being from Kilkenny, you would hear stories of Kilkenny senior hurling training, of when the lads get into training in the likes of June, July and August, it changes. It changes to a different level altogether. The gears are gone up. It's championship, and you're preparing for an All-Ireland semi-final, All-Ireland final. That atmosphere within your own training setup must have been the same as well. Ferocious games, I've no doubt, in Fitzgerald Stadium and wherever you were heading maybe away for training weekends,
Yeah, they would be, as you spoke about the training weekends there and the training camps. When you finish the league, you go into, I suppose, a heavy block of training, which get you primed for championship. And then all of a sudden, everyone's mindset changes. Well, the league is all good and well, and you can be playing well. But come championship, there was a different format in training where lads kind of said, right, I have 6 weeks now to championship here, and it was helter-skelter. I know there was nights inside in training where lads were going at it, and whether it was Jack or Pat Shea or Eamon was inside refereeing, and they just turned their back at it, and lads would be on the ground and they'd be saying leave them at it. And this was even the later years, it was happening in January and February, and I suppose it was a big thing as well when young lads were coming through. No different to when I started off, when young lads were coming in and they were trying to find their feet, and the older lads were kind of putting back on their backside inside in training. you know. So like, and I think it's a healthy thing as well, like, because I think after a while, it's no different to myself, where when you come in like that, and next all of a sudden you've an awful turn you upside down, you're saying to Jesus Christ, you're not coming here for the good of your health, you're coming here to make a difference. And it's not going to be easy, like, and you have to earn your jersey, no different with the training, like, of coaches and managers look at you saying, can I see this guy in All-Ireland semi-final when he's out on his feet? Is he going like, and that's why the running we used to that time, like, we'd be up the hills, and they were cruel, like, they were cruel runs, but you just hung in for dear life, and I could see that time, like, people saying, oh, Jesus, was pure madness, but I suppose they were testing us mentally as well, that when you were going into big championship games, could you make that last run, or could you follow your man, or would you go and leave him go? So yeah, and like, as I said, that bit of bite, no different to Kilkenny, was in, especially come championship, like the week for an inter-county game, you know, when you have an internal game or an A&B game, whatever they call it, and we always knew like that you might start off in the A team, and there'd be fellas the B team saying, yeah, well, this suits me fine now, I play well, beat him, I'll be starting the following week. So that was there was a bit of a dilemma there as well in your own mindset, like, so it was just important to play well as well, like, yeah.
Great stuff, great stuff. And you touched there on players that you would have played with, the likes of Seamus Moynihan, the likes of Eamon Fitzmaurice as well. If I can just talk about Eamon for a second, would you have foreseen that he would make the transition into management, considering he played with you and won All-Irelands in 04 and 06 with you, and then goes into management in 2012?
Yeah, I suppose he had a good stepping stone as well. You know, when Eamon always spoke in dressing room, he's a guy you'd listen to, and I suppose get involved with the schools and get involved with the Kerry on 21s. And, you know, there was fierce talk about him even those years, even with Field Rangers as well. I think the current championship, like, he played a big part with him. So when he came in with Jack in 2011, you know, when he spoke to meetings, he was always kind of someone that you would kind of sit up and kind of take in every kind of word he said. And then when he got involved, I just think he had a fantastic man management. I think he had the current man management in that, you know, every player, like, I suppose he gave every player an ear, in that if you had an issue with something, you pick up the phone, you ring him, and you tease it out. Like I always spoke about, I think it was 2014 or 15, one of the years that we played Clare in the first round, and no different what we were talking about when you go with an internal game the week before the game. I think I played well for the first 50 minutes, and I think Paul O'Donoghue came on then from St. Mary's, and I think he kicked 1-1 off in about 10 minutes because the legs were just hanging on for dear life. And we went home after, and obviously the Tuesday night then the team was being picked. That was a Saturday, I think. The Tuesday the team was being picked, and just gas. Anytime the team was being picked, Eamon would sit in the wall outside, and no one would actually leave the dressing room until the very end, so that they'd avoid him, or else we would avoid being called over to him, because we knew if you were being called over, it wasn't good. So I remember going out, and I said, you know, it was like trying to go out in the fights, and I ran out next to him. He said, Aidan, come over here next to you, we're not starting you. And funny enough, I wanted to say something to him, but I didn't, and kind of went away. And my mindset always that even when you're disappointed, you can't show it around the panel. You can be disappointed, you go home, be disappointed at home, but when you're inside the group there, you keep it yourself. So that was a Tuesday night. I remember ringing him on the Wednesday because we finished up with the team meeting. He said, look, if anyone has an issue, pick up the phone, ring me. And I can remember ringing him, and I just said to him, look, I think you're wrong team the weekend. And he went through, and he asked me why, and I just said, look, I said, I was out on my feet, and I said, there was a few more out on their feet as well. And I said, they were cute enough to go off. I said, I weren't cute enough to go off. I stayed on. The next episode, I said, I'm not starting this weekend. And he just said to me, he said, like, look, we're going to this guy. You could be on the pitch next day after 20 minutes. I know at the moment it's sore for you. Turn it into positive. Come back train Thursday night, and I did. And then lo and behold, we played Clare on the Sunday, and it just happened that I was on the pitch after 20 minutes. And just my mindset was kind of tunnel vision. But he had a great way with players and a great way to tease out things. And I just think I don't think you'd see too many players speaking too negatively of him, because in the years I was involved in there, whether I was starting or coming on, you know, he always gave a player, as I said, he gave them the time to speak, and if there was an issue, he'd always talk to them as well.
Looking at the outside, looking in with that situation with Eamon, there has to be savage respect there, like, and you can hear it in your own, you know, your own thoughts of him there, like, you know, that respect is crucial, and I suppose he, you know, to bring that collective unit together is absolutely massive. But no, excellent, fair play.
Yeah, even just speaking about your own, would say your own mindset there, Aidan. I mean, it stood to you because you have a remarkable total of 70 championship appearances over 14 years with Kerry, 2 All-Stars, 5 All-Irelands. I don't know how you could pick, but you know, if you had to pick a highlight from your career, you know, what moment would stand out for you?
Like I suppose a lot of people talk about their first All Ireland, like that's being on the pitch. Like 2014 was a special year. I think that the team had been written off. There was a lot of talk, I suppose, about the other players, including myself, still being involved, and I suppose Eamon putting trust in these players, like myself, Kieran Donaghy, Declan Sullivan, obviously Gucci doing his cruise shit, and they were saying like there was transition, and like how many years it was going to take, and that year was a very special year in that like with two massive battles with Mayo in the All Ireland semi-finals, and the game in Limerick, I suppose, took on a kind of mantra of itself with lads coming on the pitch and whatnot and going to extra time. And just I can remember against the All Ireland final then, and Donegal had overturned Dublin, and I suppose they were favourites. And I just think when we got to the final that year, we'd been up the Galtee Mountains, we did kind of a team bonding thing, and it was just, I don't know, that team or that band of players that year, it was like they were scalded from, I suppose, negative press, and I suppose it was coming from every angle, and rightly so as well. Like I suppose 13 Dublin had turned us over in All Ireland semi-final, and 14 I think the league wasn't going too well, and that was just a very special year, I think, for a lot of players. Like Declan was still kind of, I'd say, half injured, but the part he played through the year, like, was just like these guys. They were seeing, I suppose, little game time, but the impact they were having in the dressing room and outside of the pitch. No different to Colin Cooper coming back early from a cruise ship and being inside in the box games. Like it was just massive. Like, and I can remember we were out in All Ireland final that day, and like we were a team that weren't going to be beaten, and it was just very special looking back on it. And I suppose for Eamon as well, there was a lot of pressure. I suppose having been a manager for 2 or 3 years, and I think there's added pressure then. Like when I suppose Dublin were starting to come good, and Donegal were in a very kind of fruitful position at the time, and they were playing that running game that teams were finding, I suppose, difficult to play against. And I suppose a lot of talk going into that final too was how would Kerry be able to, I suppose go toe to toe with Donegal, and I suppose we got a bit of luck on the day with I think it was McFadden hit the post in the finish, or McBrearty. So you need a bit of luck to win the final as well. Like, so that'll be probably one of the finals that I look back on that. I suppose it wasn't just the final itself, but it was just the way the whole year kind of unravelled.
Fantastic. But even from hearing you speak there about, we'll say, Declan O'Sullivan and his injuries, and yet he still came on against Mayo that day in Limerick, and had a huge role to play. And yourself there, when you weren't too happy about being left out by Fitzmaurice, it doesn't seem like there was much room at any stage in the Kerry camp for sulking. You just had to kind of get on with it, because you knew there was always lads there chasing your jerseys.
No, there was, yeah. And I think what I found the last couple of years is that we started getting into a mindset where a young lad would come in, like, and you'd actually be coaxing him into the jersey, saying, look, that jersey's there for you, like, well, yes, you're going to have to fight for it, and we knew we were coming to the end of our years as well. And, like, it was all about Kerry winning, and that was the kind we all wanted to win. And I think we kind of started buying into that group and panel mentality. And as you spoke about Declan Sullivan there, he's probably one of the greatest players I've played with. And, he was just a fantastic guy in the dressing room. Jesus, he was just amazing. Anytime he spoke, like, you'd hear a pin drop, and he spoke about, like, crucial things in games, about players, about individually taking responsibility for yourself, and that was on and off the pitch as well. Like, and that group just bought into a severe mentality where, like, you'd like James Donoghue and Paul Gady and Paul Murphy coming through as well, then, like, and Peter Crowley and these guys, so, like, as you said there, like, you kind of have to buy into that mentality, because if you're around the place sulking, then it filters through a team, and it can be, like, it can lead to more things worse than anything else. You just kind of have to kind of suck it up and say, right, I'm not getting my start here, or I'm not getting game time. And that's why I said the beauty about Eamon was that you could go back and say to him, look, why am I not getting game time here? What do I need to do? Then you go do it, and then you see if you get game time, like so.
Super. And you mentioned there some of the brilliant characters and players you've played with Kerry, but you've played with some super players from around the country as well, from your times in the international rules. You've played, I think, on 2 occasions, and I'm sure they're memories that you cherish as well. Great tours to be involved in. Yeah,
the 2006 was probably the famous one above in Crow Park. It was there was a bit of an onslaught for about 20 minutes. It was an interesting game, a very, very interesting game. But I think the Railway Cup, like, do you know, I love the Railway Cup. I played it every single year. Anytime I was rang about the Railway Cup, I played it. And the reason I played it was exactly why you said it. I played with some probably the greatest players from Clare and like Waterford, like the Gary Horneys, Meaghar, Lorton Erston played me every year. You know, we travelled up the country and you'd have a night out after it. And these guys played those games like it was an All-Ireland final for them. And it was just amazing to see, like, and I genuinely mean that, the guys from Limerick and Tipperary and all these guys, it was just amazing to play with them. Like, we had some great battles with the Ulsters and the Leinsters and stuff, and we were talking there about the international rules as well, like if we finished All-Ireland final 2 weeks later, you're above in Croke Park again, you're pulling the head off of some fella for trying to make an international rules team, and you're going away then for 3 weeks, and, you know, you might have been marking a month before, next all of a sudden you're rooming with them. And I think that is the biggest beauty about the GA, where, like, you know, like, you'd see lads in games there and say, Jesus Christ, why is there pulling the head off each other there? And then 2 weeks later, you might see them out on a social platform together, which we all know is about no different to club games, where, like, when you have that rivalry between two clubs, and then when the game is over, like, it's done and dusted. And, you know, I think that was the great thing about the Railway Cup and the international rules. It gave you, outside of everything else, it gave you that platform that you could play with lads from other counties, and you know, I was very fortunate to be able to do that as well.
And when you come away from the Kerry scene, Aidan, in 2017, did you find it difficult to come away from that inter-county setup and the bubble of the Kerry setup and the Kerry players?
I was probably fortunate enough. I took the road that a lot of lads wouldn't take, went off dancing. So the void was easy enough. It was actually funny enough. I was talking to the gang from Dancing Stars in I'd say it was November 2016, and we used to be doing videos at the time, and they wanted to do a video thing, and lo and behold, the Railway Cup came up, and we were playing Leinster above inside in Parnell Park, and to the time the new rules came in, where the black card came in, and I came in about 20 minutes into the game, they were there, the video recorders, and I was marking the thing to set the forward for Antrim, and he went for a ball, he went to chip it off the ground, and I went to flick the ball. And I'd say within the space of a second, he'd chipped up, and I caught his ankle. And next the referee came over, and I said to him, hold on here now. I said, it's on Railway Cup. I said, only 20 minutes in. I said, no, gang over there as well. I said, I'm doing video recording. He was like, no, that's a black card all day long. I said, I have to go. I said, this will be the last game I know I'd play in the county. I said, but they were laughing, they were deciding, they were like, what's the story there? I said, they asked substitution. I said, no, I'm taking off substitution. I said, but so I kind of knew that stage, Jimmy, that like I knew, I suppose, after the Dublin game, the All-Ireland semi-final, walk after that, I remember myself and Matt Shea in a bit of an embrace at the tunnel, walk into the Hogan stand, and you know, like for me, my mindset was that you get to a stage of your career where you're kind of saying, is there someone better than you to come in and take over from it? And I think there was that time. There was a lot of young lads on the platform. The minors were starting to win, and I know Eamon had contacted me and said, look, there's another year in you, whether it's coming on or being there just for the young lads to bring them on a bit. And I kind of thought about that, and that was going through my head a lot as well. And for me, it wouldn't have bothered me, like, if I thought I'd make a difference for someone there, I'd say fine. But I just found then, like, when it came into January and February, that it was time to step away. Like, we were expecting our first baby as well. We were working, we were doing our home as well. And as I said, the dancing was full on as well. It was 21 hours a week, which nearly went to 200 hours a week. So that was because of how bad I was at the start. But yeah, so like there wouldn't have been enough time for the football either. Like, and I'm always of the mindset that when I was playing the football, like, it was 110% commitment or nothing.
Well, I no doubt that you know, you're watching the Kerry lads from the stand these days, but looking at the Kerry team today, do you think they're close enough to winning? I know they got the Ireland final, but you know, what do they have to do to get over the line, do you think?
I think they are. I think, like, if you look at the Dublin team, the last for the 5 in a row, I suppose their whole thought process is that they've been in so many close games with Mayo and Kerry, is that they nearly know they have the format of not kind of, when it comes down the stretch, they don't get unsettled. You know, they stick in games, they hang in there. You know, I was only watching the Mayo Dublin game there from 2015 or 16 last night there, and Jesus Christ, it was an amazing. I was a 17 or 18, whichever one it was in there, but just an amazing game. And it was the one Killian O'Connor missed the free in the finish. And you know, you'd say in that game that Dublin were dead and buried, like, but they hung in there, like, and they picked off the scores. And even the last couple of years, if you're going to beat Dublin, like, then you're going to have to be with them on the stretch. And I think Kerry were there last year in the first game. I suppose you look at the second game, the goal probably unsettled them. And I just think if you look at Kerry at the moment, they have a very young team. I think that game would have stood to them last year. Both games would have stood to them. The likes of David Clifford, Sean O'Shea, they'd be a year older. And I think defensively as well, I think they know now the system Dublin play, and I think Dublin's forwards, they nearly picked themselves. Obviously, they're going to have one or two, I suppose, young Archer now, and one or two more coming through from last year from the 21 ranks or the under 20 ranks. Like, so, if you're going to beat Dublin, like, you just need to be on top of your game on day, and obviously you need a bit of luck as well. But they are the team to beat at the moment, and I suppose we're probably very fortunate that we have the championship back to look forward to in October. But who knows with the last 3 months how teams are going to fare now. I suppose our own neighbours, Cork, they're not gone anywhere either, and they've I suppose a new setup now. Keane O'Neill has come in, and new man from Munster has come in as well. Like, so they've won the minors and under 20s the last 2 years. So I'm sure they'll have something to say about this year as well.
Lastly, Aidan, I suppose we'll have to touch on it a bit, just to get a flavour of it all. You mentioned the dancing there earlier on, and Dancing with the Stars in 2017. You won it that year. How does the buzz, would say, of the dancing, performing a big show, that adrenaline rush, how does that compare then to a big match atmosphere? Are they similar, or?
Yeah, well, like we used to laugh every Sunday night after we with Des Carl, and we used to be watching the league Sunday. But a lot of them rehearsing as if Des watching the football and the hurling. But people used to be asking me, like, is the buzz the same now? As I always said, if you were playing an Ireland final and you made a mistake within a minute and a half, you can rectify yourself. You have another 70 minutes to rectify yourself. With Dancing with the Stars, so you have a minute and a half max. And if you fall or do anything, you're kind of saying, Jesus Christ, this is not good because you're on live television. But like the Sunday night, for me, I suppose, like, Tadhg, it was something that I had never seen myself doing. I suppose someone coming from, I suppose, I won't say it's a background of a kind of a quiet person. I suppose I did a lot of my talking on the field and kind of brought my personality out. But to do something like that was something totally, I suppose, outside my kind of comfort zone. And like, there was a massive buzz every Sunday night. There were 240 people inside there, like, and they're down on top of you. Next, when you walk on the floor, there's a big, massive shout, and you're trying to think of your steps, and you're trying to remember everything. Like, and the minute and a half absolutely flies, but like the training for it was flat to the mat. Like, I came back playing football at the club, and I don't think my feet were ever as quick. So if I had dancing back in my younger days, it might have helped my fitness as well. Like, but like, they talk about it's an art for them. Like, but they're phenomenal athletes. You take your hat off to them. Like, we talk about nowadays about mobility and movement in fitness and in the G and how big it's after coming into it. And if you watch them when they're dancing, geez, they can do anything with their body. Like, so they're just amazing athletes. And I think I've taken something from that as well. Like, even the last couple of years, the way I'm kind of training the body more now with mobility and movement being a massive part of it. Obviously with the strength side of it as well. Like, so look, you learned it from me, and for me, like, that it's no different to football. Like, it was a case of doing something new, hanging in there, and leaving it all out there then for the final. Like, so it was an enjoyable 12 weeks.
Fantastic. Well, fair play to you. I suppose, Aidan, just before we finish up, because we're kind of running out of time here, we usually finish with a kind of a rapid fire question round, just to put you on the spot, if you'd be okay with that.
No bother.
So I'll just put you on the timer here, and we'll go in 3, 2, 1. The best footballer you've played with?
Declan Sullivan, Colin Cooper, Seamus Mine, Dara Shea.
Best footballer you've played against?
Best footballer I played against? John Galvin, Limerick.
Favourite sport outside of football?
Soccer.
Twitter or Instagram?
Instagram.
Messi or Ronaldo?
Ronaldo.
Last book you read?
The All Blacks.
Your favourite venue to play in?
Fishtown Stadium.
One sporting event you'd like to attend?
I'll stick with the J. I'll say a hurling final. I haven't been to one yet. Yeah, I knew Jimmy. I said he's doing it. I haven't been to an Ireland hurling final yet. Should you make it happen this year? You will.
Your favourite music?
Oh, Jesus. Anything to do with fitness.
And your favourite podcast?
Favorite podcast? I liked Two Johnnies or Blind Boys good as well.
Thanks a million for the phenomenal interview. You were an inspiration growing up for my generation and so many more young people. A stalwart at centre back and in defence. A great clubman and a gentleman as well. Aidan, thanks a million for joining us on the show. And Jimmy here will be in touch for a few dancing lessons before we head back to college next year.
No bother at all, Jimmy. Anytime.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Thanks, lads. Great talk to you, boys.
Thanks a million.
Yes, lads. Thanks, lads.
Just before we finish up with today's episode and bring today's episode to conclusion, last week, as you may have seen on our Instagram or Twitter pages, the extended panel made it to third place on the Apple Podcast Football Charts of the Week. So thanks a million to all our listeners, followers on all social media and on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and to learmedia.com and our YouTube page for getting us this far in just our first season. So thanks a million, and we'll see you next Sunday with a brand new episode.